So for my project, I made my book, The Littlest Bill on Capitol Hill. Once upon a time, there was a little boy named Billy that dreamed of becoming a law. Like the other bills before him, Billy hoped that he would be signed so that he could better the lives in a small town. But how did Billy turn into a bill? Well, in the beginning, Billy had started off as an idea by a group of citizens in a small town of northern Michigan. The people in this town saw that there was no stop sign at the train tracks where cars passed by, so they came together to form an idea. Shortly afterwards, the citizens then called their local congresswoman's office in the area. They then asked her to sponsor their idea, which she agreed to, and began working on a proposal to be formally introduced at Congress. A couple of weeks later, Billy and the congresswoman flew to Washington, D.C., where they headed off to the U.S. Capitol. Their first stop was the House of Representatives, where Billy was taken to the clerk of the House and placed in the hopper. Usually in the House of Representatives, the Speaker of the House places a calendar and sets a limit for each bill. Sometimes when bills reach committees and subcommittees, they can be killed in the process of debate. Billy was hoping not to get killed by these committees and hoped to pass in the House. After a while, Billy was taken to the committee and handed off to a subcommittee where their job is to report on Billy's findings. Once they found everything they needed, the subcommittee took Billy back to the full committee where they presented Billy to them. Shortly afterward, Billy was voted by the full committee and was marked to be made into a cleaner bill. Then Billy was fast on his way to the House floor, however, first had to go through the Rules Committee. Even though he had already gotten through the House committees, he was still scared about what the outcome on the floor would turn out as. However, once he got to the Rules Committee, a procedure was being set in place for a time limit and rules. Once he was done with the Rules Committee, Billy was then placed on the House calendar. With the Rules Committee, the debate is limited by the number of times a person talks and as well as the split between members. Once that was done, a quorum call is given to all members of the House to make sure that all 218 members were present to take the vote. Finally, the day was here as members of the House first took attendance and then took the vote. And in order to actively vote in the House of Representatives, members will vote with either a yay or a nay. Luckily, Billy had enough support behind him and was now off to the Senate to be voted on. However, if Billy had been formally introduced in both the House and the Senate and was passed, he wouldn't have to go through the same process again. But he didn't mind going through the same thing again because he was still happy about making it this far already. Billy and the congresswoman were both ecstatic about him making through the House of Representatives. Now, all they had to do was go through the same process in the Senate's approval before he was sent off to the president to be signed. Thankfully, after a couple of weeks, he made it through the committees and subcommittees with approval, then was off to the floor. Like last time, Billy was nervous and hopeful to not die in the Senate because he didn't want to go back to the House. Luckily, there had been no complications in the Senate because he had been passed by both houses. Hooray! Billy was off to the White House. After going through the House and the Senate, Billy was ecstatic that he was going to be a law. However, Billy had just one more hoop to jump through. Oftentimes, when bills pass through both houses, they can be sometimes vetoed by the president. Once they get vetoed, they can go through both houses again before trying again at the White House. But for Billy, he wouldn't have to do that because he was signed by the president. Hooray for Billy! He was now signed into a law and now could go back to Michigan and tell his town the good news.